Chapter 1. The last time Laszlo Enietti and I made this much physical contact with each other, the Berlin Wall was falling. Literally. As the crowd energetically chiseled chunks of graffitied concrete off the sections surrounding the wall's checkpoints, Laszlo's body pressed so close to mine that his heat nearly melded us together. That was, of course, over 30 years ago. But for someone who's been around as long as I have, 3 decades is little more than a shooting star flitting across the night sky, and I remember that moment well. It was history in the making. A watershed hour for the revolution. A shift in the paradigm that led to portentous sea changes in the tides of civilization and drew people like me, from all over the world. Although, to be truthful, I only went to Germany because I was hungry. Careful research had indicated that a very bad man was prowling around Berlin, doing very bad things to innocent people. Since someone needed to stop him, and since I hadn't fed properly in a few weeks, I decided to pay him a visit and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Except, it wasn't fowl that I killed. Afterward, I licked my chops, adjusted the shoulder pads of my blazer, and took a stroll through the bustling droves of humans celebrating the epic-making night. The thing about creatures of my ilk is, we've seen it all happen already, over and over again. We understand that time is a flat circle. We have witnessed civilizations rise, plateau, fall, then plateau again on their way back up. Rationally, we know better than to get too invested in the affairs of mortals. Still, there is something deliciously sustaining about the energy that surges through a crowd during a landmark event. All that transformative, life-changing power is like a current coursing through our veins, and a luscious juxtaposition to the fixed immutability of our own existence. All of this is to say, I was hanging out in Berlin and having a pretty good time until I spotted Laszlo Enietti. My least yet most favorite slayer. Or maybe just the only one I could have picked out of a lineup. My familiarity with Enietti was expected, considering that the Helsing Guild had specifically tasked him with eradicating my bloodline. Still, most vampire slayers came and went, usually done in by a moment of distraction or by their own reckless, hateful hubris. Enietti, though, had been around since the early Middle Ages, probably because he was irritatingly skilled at his job. I didn't wonder how he knew that I'd be in Berlin, because there was no point. Tracking me down was a special talent of his, just like simultaneously patting my head and rubbing my belly was mine. Everyone was gifted in their own special way. Enietti's skills just happened to be useful. "Vampire," he whispered the second our eyes met across the festive mob. There were several million decibels and the equivalent of an Olympic-size pool between us, but I could hear him as clearly as if he dwelled inside my head. I studied him for a split second, took in the colorful tattoos that climbed around his neck to curl under his jawline, his dark hair and amber eyes, the towering stillness of his shoulders as people walked around him, instinctively stepping out of his way. "Slayer," I sighed. And then, as was my habit and sole option when faced with Enietti, I began to run. I wove through the crowd fast enough to lose him, but slow enough not to raise suspicions among the celebrants. I ducked under trenches, dodged the hammers and megaphones that were being waved about, and I probably would have vanished into the night if a sobbing child hadn't materialized right in front of my eyes. I skidded to a halt, stared at the clump of reddened cheeks, snot, and inconsolable tears blubbering at my feet. Waited for the toddler to take a breathing break from the bawling to stammer, "Are you, okay?" She, they were not. They were desperately looking for their mother, and even an archetypal monster such as myself could not help the brat. "Entschuldigung?" I asked, frantically glancing around for a motherly-looking human. Once the mutter in question was located, I scrammed again, but I'd lost too much of my advantage and, well, that's how I found myself close enough to Enietti that I could feel his heart beating against my chest. Pressed between him and the brick side of a house, to be precise. This kind of shit, I mentally informed the universe, does not incentivize good deeds. The universe didn't reply, probably because it was too scared of Laszlo and Yeti to speak over him as he said, "Ethelthrith. At last, we meet again." I beamed up, hoping that it would irritate him. "Hey, friend." We weren't friends, not by any correct meaning of the word. But, as much as it pained me to admit it, I did have a bit of a parasocial relationship going on with him, despite us having exchanged a grand total of 24 words, most of which were some variation of die, monster, and no, you die first. Not that I enjoy relentless harassment, but what's a girl to do when the only constant presence during the last millennium of her life has been a guy who's contractually mandated to murder her? "How long has it been?" I asked, batting my eyes. "At least since the early 80s. I hope you're still using sunscreen, because those crow's feet around your eyes don't shit." I grunted as a dagger sank into my stomach, pinning me to the brick wall. It wasn't a big deal. The only surefire way to kill a vampire was to drag them kicking and screaming into the sun, which Laszlo knew very well. Still, being skewered fucking hurt. "Nice tea to see you, T2. I sputtered between coughs, trying to hold my smile in place. A mix of phlegm and blood squirted out of my throat and landed on his button-down, but I didn't feel bad at all. Fuck him and his dry-cleaning bill. "Look at you," he murmured in his faded Eastern European accent, those yellow animal eyes raking down my skin. "Flushed and plump and beautiful. You just fed, didn't you?" "Beautiful? Aw, Laszlo, I didn't know you had a crush on motherfucker." He jockeyed the blade back and forth in my belly, which, ouch. On the plus side, it gave me the opportunity to jerk in his arms and fake a seizure-like movement, which I used to retrieve my own dagger from my hip, which I then plunged into his flank with relish. The grunt that rose to his chest was like a whole symphonic orchestra to my ears. "Now we're even," I gritted out. "Are we?" Laszlo's expression did not give me the satisfaction of changing a single millimeter. Slayers, too, were unlikely to make a big fuss over some light stabbing. "What about when the sun rises? I have you pinned." I scoffed, ignoring the dribble of blood trickling out of the corner of my mouth. "Dawn is in 6 hours. I hope you have some fun ideas for how to pass the time." His lips twitched. We could reminisce. Thankfully, we share many memories. Thankfully, like that time you tried to kill me in Constantinople, or the time you tried to kill me in Lampang, or the time you tried to kill me in a courtyard in Venice, or the time in Saskatoon where, and you may start to notice a pattern, you also tried to. "Hush, Ethelthrith." His tone was harsh, even through the warmth of his small smile. He was bleeding profusely, and the scent of it wafted up, strong, metallic, divine. Saliva pooled in my mouth, and I wondered how I could feel such hunger while my internal organs were being minced into meat loaf. How the hell did a slayer's blood get to smell this good? "You're going to have to knock me out if you want me to shut up until sunrise." "And deprive myself of your company," he clicked his tongue. "Never." "Really? Well, allow me to point out that if you get your way, you're going to be deprived of my company for a hell of a lot longer then." "Excuse me, you too." We turned, startled, both by the British-sounding voice addressing us and by the fact that, in the process, my forehead brushed against Laszlo's lips, a gesture too similar to a kiss for comfort. A shiver ran down my spine. "We are with the BBC and overheard you speaking English. Would it be possible to interview you about your perspective on tonight's events?" Laszlo and I stared at the journalists idling in the dimly lit side street, speechless. "Sir? Ma'am, you do speak English, right?" Behind him, a woman was carrying a handheld camera, and an idea light-bulbed its way into my brain. "We sure do," I said with a dazzling grin. I freed my hand from where it was trapped between my and Laszlo's torsos, wiped the blood off my mouth, then gently pushed against his shoulder. "Baby, will you get off me for a second?" I schooled my features into a pout, enjoying his clenching jaw immensely. "I want to talk with the BBC. I want to be on TV." "That's great, ma'am. Will you move to that corner with us? The lighting is much better over there." One fun thing about the Slayers was they had a governing body. And rumor had it that the Helsing Guild didn't love public displays of murder, especially not those caught on camera. Humans, after all, were fragile little souls. I had the right to say that, because I used to be one, and they couldn't be trusted with finding out that vampires and slayers walked among them. Their reaction would have likely involved running to the grocery store, buying all the canned goods and toilet paper, and then never leaving the house again. They'd cause way too much of a fuss and disrupt the supply chain. No, thank you. So, starting with the 20th century, the Guild had cracked down on slayers killing us in front of witnesses. And by doing so, they saved my life. "Come on, baby," I said sweetly, my eyes meeting the cut glass of Laszlo's. "We can make out later, no." Laszlo's yes was a deliciously disgruntled growl. I tried not to wince as he angled our bodies to hide the slide of his dagger out of my abdomen. I did the same with my knife, and then glanced down to make sure that the blood wasn't visible against the dark fabric of my shirt. Meanwhile, the camera kept filming. "I know you hate being in the spotlight, honey pie. Why don't you wait here while I do my interview?" Laszlo's shirt was lighter than mine, and what a poor choice of attire for a hunt. He was in no position to follow us to a place with better illumination, and he knew it. "Until the next time, then," he said with a deep frown. "Right, that might be a while. Sorry. As long as you don't let anyone get to you before I do, Ethelthrith." "Oh, don't worry. I'll always save myself for you." And that's how I got away from Laszlo Enietti on the night of November 9, 1989. As I walked side by side with the journalists, I did look back at Laszlo once, mostly to treat him to my smuggest, most insufferable grin. He was where I'd left him, still scowling down at his dagger. When he noticed my eyes on him, he lifted the blade up to his face. And with a smile that did not feel like a smile, he began to lick it clean of my blood. It was, well, it just was. A lot of things, among which the last time we were so close. I've caught glimpses of Laszlo a few times since, at a year 2000 celebration in LA, in the early aughts in Southeast Asia, after that Lilith Fair revival in 2010, but never had as close a call as it was in Berlin, and I always managed to slip away before he could get near. Until now. Today, nearly 36 years after that night in Germany, his arms wrap tight around me, his body is a heavy blanket above mine, and his only purpose seems to be shielding me from the sunlight. Today, Laszlo Enietti saved my life. Chapter 2. My mother didn't raise a quitter. Well, my mother didn't raise me at all. She dropped me off at the Abbey once my brother came into the world, after promising to Saint Fursey that if my father begat the male heir he so ardently wished for, she would dedicate her eldest daughter's life to piety and labor. Dear Mommy was very generous with her pledges, especially when they involved sacrificing other people. It was unfortunate for me, the eldest daughter in question, and let's be honest, even more unfortunate for the abbess, that my disposition wasn't quite monastic material. Not that I was a rebel or a miscreant. That would have required scheming, hard work, or well-organized defiance, and little Ethelthrith was too much of an absent-minded, stargazing dreamer for that. Of course, that was an issue in and of itself, because I constantly wished for things that weren't compatible with my destiny. I wished to travel. I wished to laugh. I wished for ballads and dances and tales. I wished for a life that I couldn't have, which was, apparently, my greatest flaw. Despite being compelled by the Benedictine rule to pray 8 times a day, the abbess still found time to remind me that if I kept coveting a future that didn't belong to me, I would end up in freezing water for eternity, and my bones would rot inside my body. Her credibility may have been slightly undercut by the fact that she also believed in putting the livestock on trial for misbehaving, and in plucking off the entirety of her eyebrows. Regrettably, I cannot recommend growing up in a small nunnery located in 8th century East Anglia. Still, she wasn't wrong about me. I want things that do not belong to me all the time. Chief of which, companionship. My favorite part of being in the convent, of course, was the taste of sisterhood it gifted me. The women I lived with, they were my people. My family. My community. They taught me the beauty of sharing a life, and I naively assumed that this kind of fellowship would forever be within my reach. Then my vampire maker yanked it away, and I have been aching for it ever since. The problem lies with the disposition of my kind. A lot of legends assume that we like to stick together. They speak of clans and nests and hives where vampires gather to join forces in preparation for our nefarious deeds. They imply that we form a structured society, that we do meal trains, that we date and bang it out and have cute little vampiric children. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Most vampires are extremely territorial. They cannot stand close proximity with others, crave competition even when natural resources abound, and are more likely to murder each other than to extend a dinner invitation. Vampires suck, no pun intended, and are condemned to an eternity of conflict and solitude. So, of course, a vampire is what gregarious, companionable young me was turned into. And because the abbess, the nunnery, and the fortnightly mandatory vows of fasting didn't raise a quitter, nor did they manage to beat the stubbornness out of me, even 13 centuries into my vampiric tenure, I have yet to accept my new circumstances. That, I fear, will be my demise. My latest bout of misfortune started a few months ago when a new vampire moved into a house located just a little too close to my place. Initially, I didn't think too much of it. New York is huge, and I was by no means the only vampire living in the city. Manhattan, however, has been my personal hunting ground for the last decade or so, chiefly because of the abundance of my favorite kind of meal. My motto is, if I have to suck someone dry every few weeks, why not make it a Goldman Sachs executive? But all of a sudden, I was no longer alone in my 7-block radius, which could only be interpreted as a challenge and left me with two options: getting the hell out of the place that had been my home for the previous 10 years or putting some effort into running the new vampire out of my territory. Stubbornly, I decided to bring shame upon my species by doing neither. I liked my cramped little apartment. How early the winter sun set in the city. The way the people walked fast until they blurred, unaware of the fragility of their short little lives, day after week after month. I enjoyed the Four Seasons, the museums and movie theaters, the scent of the eateries I would never step foot into. More recently, a few small raccoons seemed to have acquired me. They'd climb up the fire escape and stare into my window until I provided them with food, hiss at me while they consumed the fruits of my labor, and then unceremoniously scurry away, no doubt to some other idiot who'd also purchased a bodega rotisserie chicken just for the occasion. The point is, I'd been having a fine time. I didn't want to spend weeks planning an ambush on some asshole who was trying to pick a fight, but I also didn't want to move. So I carved out a third option for myself. I would ignore the new guy and hope he'd do the same. Naturally, he didn't. Instead, after a few months of uneventful coexisting that lulled me into a false sense of security, he attacked me while I was taking a nighttime stroll in Central Park. No biggie. I thought it was shitty of him not to give me some warning before resorting to violence. A courtesy horse head in my bed, a scribbled note pinned to my door with a bloody dagger. Still, this was obviously a baby vampire, a male of just a few hundred years. Fighting him off took very little effort. I left him unconscious under the obelisk and thought, fuck this. I'm not dealing with the mood swings of an adolescent. I'm moving. My first mistake was not restraining him. My second, stopping by my apartment to collect a couple of things. The bronze comb mother had bestowed upon me before I joined the convent. The small portrait of Donna Lucia, a human who correctly guessed that I was a vampire and still traveled all over Europe with me, painted by Botticelli in the 1400s. The cassette tape of songs I composed during my shoegaze era. That kind of stuff. Teenage dirtbag vampire was there, waiting for me, and this time he managed to take me by surprise, knock me out, and drag me to an abandoned building, where he tied me to a chair bolted in front of an east-facing window. I regained consciousness a little before sunrise, just long enough to ponder whether in my almost 1400 years I'd left a permanent mark on the world, and whether anyone was going to notice my absence. At the very least, I thought, the raccoons will, once they're hungry. Sunlight began to filter through the glass, and all I could think about in my last few seconds was something that hadn't crossed my mind for at least a decade. As long as you don't let anyone get to you before I do, Ethelthrith. Ah, yes, Laszlo Enieti. Hopefully, he wouldn't be too heartbroken. If it makes you feel better, I thought fondly at him, willing the universe to pass on the message, I would have preferred it to be you. Apparently, I would have preferred it so much, my brain produced him out of thin air. Enieti, the worst Helsing slayer to ever set eyes on a vampire, was standing in front of me. One last mirage before the end. Hey, I told him with a small, amused smile. Couldn't bear to let someone else butcher me, huh? I know what's mine, he muttered in his usual clipped tone. He moved to free my tied wrists, and his hands felt so warm and assured and uncannily real on my flesh. I began to suspect that maybe. Hang on, are you actually here? Just as a sunbeam reached the chair, he tore through my bindings and pushed me none too gently away from the light. That's when teenage dirtbag, who clearly had been waiting for a pyrotechnic show from somewhere in the shade, decided that he wasn't going to let a random slayer interfere with his kill. It led to a three-way scuffle, during which I lost track of who was doing what, and then to a very cinematic sequence that ended with Laszlo throwing teenage dirtbag off the fire escape. I wish I could have watched him burn to death, but I was busy dealing with my own pickle, more precisely, the fact that before Laszlo had gotten to him, teenage dirtbag had managed to tackle me and break my legs, my hip bone, and my left shoulder, making it impossible for me to move. The fractures were going to heal quickly, but not fast enough for me to escape the rapidly approaching sunshine. This is it, I thought. The end. That's when Enieti sprinted to bodily push me out of the light, hit his head on a collapsing ceiling beam, and fell unconscious on top of me. Which would be where we are at, right now. Clearly, this slayer really wants me to die on his terms. I say as his limp weight flattens me. My tendons and bones are already reknitting together. I am a vampire. I have super strength. Still, slithering across the sunny floor while covering myself with his body is a feat, and so is dragging the both of us to a windowless hallway. So much so, my neurons must be too fatigued to work. What the hell am I doing, pulling Laszlo with me, propping him up against the drywall? Running my hand through his dark hair to assess the severity of his wounds, he's a slayer. He only saved me so he could slaughter me himself. Now I'm stuck in an abandoned Soho building with him, and I'll have to spend the hours until sunset hunted by him. Unless I kill him first. The thought hits me along with a tinge of guilt, which I push down incredulously. Did the raccoons eat your prefrontal cortex, idiot? You have to kill him. Immediately. Yes, I do. I have to behead him. The one thing slayers can't heal from. But Dirtbag took my weapons, and I. Laszlo must still have something sharp somewhere on his person. I throw myself into him, running my hand across an expanse of muscles that I would find more impressive if it weren't exclusively dedicated to murdering me and my bloodline. He still has four blades on him, hidden in a variety of places. I take the longest one from his boot, lift it to his throat, and let my hands fall. He just saved my life, and I've known him since before the 1100s. I still remember his dumb crusade outfits. Do you also remember when he cut off your chin with his dumb crusade sword? It took like 5 weeks for it to grow back to the right shape. Correct. That's why I have to do this. It's him or me and... Fuck, a confused voice says. When I glance at him, Enieti is blinking at me, massaging the side of his head. Kill him now, but I don't, because I'm too busy listening to the 5 words that change my life forever. Who the hell are you? Chapter 3. The abbess once told me that the real problems are rarely the ones we spend our time worrying about. It was, I believe, in the context of me fretting over the pain of getting a tooth pulled, as opposed to, say, the fires of eternal damnation. At the time, I cradled my swollen cheek and rolled my eyes, but this might be the day I seriously reevaluate my centuries-deep poor opinion of her, because she was obviously right. Laszlo doesn't remember who I am, and I'm ready to panic about it. But that's barely an issue, especially when confronted with an even more pressing discovery. Laszlo doesn't remember who he is. What do you mean you don't know? I ask. When he opened his eyes, I scurried back like the roach that I so clearly am, which means that we're sitting against opposite walls in the hallway. I hide his dagger behind my back, wondering if, when I'll have to use it on him. Seems self-explanatory, Eddie mutters in the deadpan inflection I've long learned to associate with him. He sits up straighter in a flurry of muscles, rubbing the back of his skull. When the heel of his palm comes back bloody, he stares at it for a moment, then shrugs. Where are we? Soho, I think. I keep my eyes fixed on him, waiting for a pounce. And where's that? On, planet Earth. His glare tells me I zoomed out a tad too much. U.S., New York City. I see, and who are we? Do you really not? Yes, he interrupts with a low, irritated grunt. I really do not. I don't remember my name, yours, the reason I'm here, or the events that precipitated this moment. Moreover, I couldn't list a single person I know. In fact, I don't even remember when I learned the meaning of the words I'm using. What I do know, however, is the definition of amnesia, which is a not uncommon symptom following a blow to the head. Laszlo, I say, mostly to shut him up, dickhead, your name is Laszlo Enietti. He mouths the words, what's the origin of that? I glance at the ink that seems to cover every inch of his body. Tattoos have been embraced by slayers since long before they became mainstream, but Laszlo's art has always set him apart from his brethren and always fascinated me. It's made of ancient, angular runes that remind me of the old Turkic script, distinctively Carpathian designs, colors and motifs calling back to Eastern European folklore. Hungary, I believe. Am I Hungarian? Is he? We haven't exactly exchanged introductions over lattes. The only reason I even know his name is that he was turned into a slayer specifically to eliminate my bloodline. Many centuries ago, when I visited Athens and ran across another vampire originated by my own maker, she shared some intel with me before going on her merry way. That was back when Greece was still part of the Ottoman Empire. I'm not sure where you are from. Do you understand what I'm saying? I ask in Hungarian. My grammar has to be dated, because I haven't spent significant time in the area since the Habsburg jaw was all the rage, but Laszlo replies fluently and without a hint of an accent. I guess you are, I say, but I think you've been living abroad for a while. You think, his eyes, nearly brown in the dim hallway, narrow. Do we not know each other? Why am I subjecting myself to this? Right, he saved my life. I'm trapped, that kind of shit. We are business associates, I say, pleased by how much better it sounds than the more truthful mortal enemies, but only professionally. Business associates, he repeats, skeptical. Yes, because of our work. He stares, unimpressed, and our work is, this and that. I shrug, hoping he'll assume we DoorDash for a living and leave it at that. But I should have known better than to expect some guy who's been after me for the last 1,000 years to let go of anything. He pushes off the wall and scoots closer, close enough that his heat washes over me in waves. Maybe slayers have even more powers than I originally thought, because when his gaze latches on to mine, I cannot look away. Why do I get the impression that you're lying to me? Damn it, because you hit your noggin, and your impressions are out of whack. Nah, his voice is dark. That's not it. No offense, but someone who won't know whether he's circumcised until he takes a peek inside his underwear may have less than excellent instincts when it comes to. What's your name? He inches even closer. I could tell him anything. Joan of Arc, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Fiona from Shrek. Sadly, immortality must have made me boring because I say, I go by Ethel. when shitheads don't insist on using my full antediluvian name. Ethel, pretty. His nod is pleased, but his tone suggests that he's not above gutting pretty things. He reaches forward to take a lock of my hair between his fingertips, turning it back and forth. What color is this? I swallow. Strawberry blonde. Strawberry blonde, he repeats, and even though he doesn't say pretty again, I can almost hear it. And then he continues. Ethel, since the very second I regained consciousness, I have been very alert to my surroundings. Perhaps too alert, if you take my meaning. I'm not sure I do. No? Well, I know how many exits and vents are in the hallway, and I could easily draw a blueprint for this building. I've been counting the cars driving outside. I can guess your weight and age to the decimal point, and I can feel that I have at least 7 weapons strategically placed on my body, while you have been doing a poor job of hiding a single dagger behind your back. I would also easily be able to reconstruct the series of blows and relative positions that led to this. The back of his hand brushes against my cheekbone, a barely there touch that has me pulling back and shivering at the same time. Specific pattern of bruises on your skin. This is a degree of situational awareness that doesn't strike me as typical for a paralegal, so. What are our jobs, Ethel? I swallow. I should swat his hand away, but I am paralyzed, unable to recall the last time someone touched me voluntarily without trying to hurt me. Ethel, he prompts, finally dropping his arm. He stares, waiting for an honest response that I simply cannot give him. Your job, your one single job, the reason you were bestowed immortality, the reason you were trained in all those things you just mentioned, is to kill creatures like me. My job is to run from you. As you can probably imagine, this puts us at odds, even more so because you're not the type to half-ass anything. In fact, you want to kill me so bad, you just stop someone else so that you'd be the one to do the honors. Frankly, I admire your commitment. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Am I a criminal? He asks, sounding intrigued by the prospect. Is that why you're withholding information from me? What? No, not a criminal. You are just, I rack my brain, an asshole. He snorts. Don't spare the feelings of the infirm. Well, you're an infirm asshole, so. I am not. Excuse me, I would know. Why am I an asshole? He's scowling now. Several reasons. Such as, you are a literal vampire killer. Because. You didn't list any reason. I huff. You wear sunglasses inside, for one. His face falls, mortified. Mafia boss, no problem, douchebag, a line must be drawn. Do I really? No, I say, feeling a little guilty. I'm not even sure you own sunglasses, but you and I, we don't get along very well. He lets out a single dismissive laugh. Right. I'm serious, we are nemesis. No, we are not. I frown. Why don't you believe me? We deeply dislike each other. Maybe you don't like me because I clearly. He stops, shakes his head, declares as though the truth exists only to be molded by his words. We aren't nemesis. I don't want to fight with you. Says the slayer, I mutter bitterly, and when his eyes widen, I want to punch myself. Slayer, he repeats, his voice hushed. I tighten my grip around the dagger, waiting for, I don't know, for him to remember, for an attack. Definitely not for him to ask, you mean an exterminator for bugs. My shoulders slump in relief. I hear myself saying, yeah, exactly. And we're nemesis. His tone is derisive, because, what? You had a bedbug situation I couldn't fix. I am the bedbug, Laszlo. It's just in our nature, because I'm an entomologist. What? This is coming together surprisingly well. You are a SL, an exterminator, and I am the kind of scientist who studies insects and their behaviors. As you can probably imagine, my existence, my professional existence, that is incompatible with yours. You kill bugs, I keep them alive. Do entomologists really hate pest control? Probably not. Doesn't matter. Conflict of interest. The head injury must be working in my favor, because Laszlo asks, "Is that why we're here? Because of pest control?" I nod enthusiastically. "You were on a job, I tried to stop you. We both stumbled, that's why you fell and I point at my cheek. This." The hesitation on his face spells out, "You know, all of this sounds like bullshit, right?" But instead of calling me out on it, Laszlo says, "Sure, fine, let's just go." With enviable agility, he rises to his feet. "A doctor will know how to help me remember this stuff. That you clearly made up remains unsaid." "Agreed. You should check out Mount Sinai, but Lennox is." "You're coming with me," he says, scowling again. So deeply, I decide to casually remind him that I still have a dagger with a flick of my wrist. "Sadly, I can't." "Why?" The trick about lies is, one has to put their whole heart into them, so I don't let myself hesitate. "I'm allergic to the sun." A slow blink. "You are allergic to the sun?" "Yes, it's a pretty common condition, actually." "What happens if you go outside?" "Boils, pus, instant death." "You know, I'd rather wait for sundown to get out. Anyway, it was great to hang out with you. Good luck at the hospital and—" My voice drifts into silence as Laszlo lowers himself back into a sitting position. The tip of his boot brushes against the side of my sneaker. "The hospital's the other way," I joke weakly. "I'm not leaving you here alone." He sounds and looks equal parts put upon and determined. A thought occurs to me. What if he's faking it? What if he knows that I'm trapped here with him, that he can torture me and keep me at his mercy for the next 10 hours? What if he's just a great actor, toying with a lying mouse? To test that theory, I ask, "Hey." His eyebrow arches. What now? He must have little faith in my ability to carry out an interesting conversation. I clear my throat. "Have you heard of vampires?" "Of course I have." My stomach sinks and I grip the dagger once again, until he adds in a knowing tone, "Like Dracula, Carmilla." "Yeah, or Nosferatu. You know, vampires." "I'm familiar." "Right, I was wondering, do you think they really exist?" He stares, 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 and right when I'm sure he's going to end me, he says, "Ethel." "Yeah." I know that I hit my head, but what happened to yours? Chapter 4. Exhibit number 36 that Laszlo Enietti is not faking the whole amnesia thing. He takes a nap. In the middle of the day. 3 feet away from me. 1 second I'm making up wild facts about swallowtail butterflies to salvage my already in tatters entomology cover, and the next he's lying back to rest for a minute, throwing his elbow over his eyes and breathing quietly. Sleeping off the concussion, big no-no for humans, but a non-issue for slayers. His chest rises and falls in a slow rhythm, and he has to be fucking with me. No trained fighter lets his guard down this irresponsibly with someone he barely knows. Slayers are never this vulnerable. It can only be a trap, so I decide to kill him. I set the blade of my stolen dagger horizontally and lower it to his Adam's apple guillotine style. I'm strong enough to cut through the muscles and bones and tendons, and where is his self-preservation? Why the hell is he not stopping me? I slink back to my shadowy corner to sulk, convinced that he's well and truly asleep. Okay, so his memory is gone. But shouldn't there be some trace of an instinct, some emotional residue, an inkling that I am his enemy and that he shouldn't trust me? Laszlo begins snoring softly. Clearly not. I lean back and study him, wondering about his life outside our centuries-long game of hide-and-seek-and-stab. Does he have a family? A girlfriend or a boyfriend? A polycule? Slayers are immortal until they're beheaded. They are incredibly strong and enhanced in every conceivable way, sure. Deep down, though, they are still human. They long for connection. I bet he does have a family. They must be who he spends time with between hunts. After all, I don't see him a lot. We usually only cross paths once a decade or so. Before Berlin, there was that Pink Floyd tour in 1980 and that David Bowie concert in the 70s, and now that I think about it, by liking live music as much as I do, I may have made it a bit too easy for him to find me. I chew on my lower lip, remembering 1964. My one-night-long career as a singer-songwriter. Does taking advantage of an open mic night at a seedy underground club qualify as working in the music industry? It should. I certainly had fun singing about youth counterculture. Even more so after Laszlo appeared in the audience. Ethel Thrith, he whispered the second I spotted him in the crowd, his yellow eyes glowing even through the cigarette smoke. I strove to remember what weapons I'd stuffed into my go-go boots and thought, come on, Eddie. Stop ruining my fun. Next song up is about how lonely I am and how sad that I haven't gotten laid in at least 300 years. But Laszlo didn't jump on the stage. Didn't throw a hatchet at me either. He simply let me croon on for a while, with my trite fire desire and love above rhymes. Patiently, he stared with that icy, unsettling gaze as I sang something cringeworthy about how no one understands. I just want to feel his hands. When my masterpiece ended, everyone applauded except for him. It seemed rude, much ruder than the usual assassination attempts, so I decided he needed to pay for that. Thank you, everyone. That last song, it's very personal to me. I wrote it for the man I love. The crowd cheered and whistled. Laszlo's jaw hardened, probably in disgust at the thought of vampires having feelings, or smooching, or, even worse, fucking. I haven't seen him in 10 years or so, and I was heartbroken when he left me, which inspired me to pour my emotions into some music. I lowered my eyes, pretended to sniffle. But good news, he came back to me. More scattered, good-hearted claps, and he's here tonight. The crowd looked around, breaking into excited murmuring. So please, join me in welcoming the love of my life. The chatter became louder. Laszlo, thank you for being here. I grinned at him. People followed the direction of my gaze, brazenly eyeing him. I watched his lips part and his expression flatten, Laszlo's equivalent of a jaw drop. The hand holding his drink set the glass on the table with a loud thud. Hi, honey, I purred. The technician in the back must have been less stoned than usual, because lo and behold, a spotlight turned on, flooding Laszlo's table and the tight purse of his lips. I bit back maniacal laughter. If the Slayer forced the sunrise upon me because of this, it would have been worth it. You are the only man for me, baby, I whispered into the microphone. A giddy awe diffused throughout the room. Laszlo's eyes were sharper than needles, but no one could pick that up. They would, however, have noticed if he'd chosen to stick a couple of swords through my chest. He had to restrain himself, and wasn't that fun? I hope you loved the song. At last, he smiled. I could have sworn I spotted an amused dimple dipping within his cheek, but he mouthed a few words at me. I am going to kill you, I gasped. What was that? Laszlo, did you just say that you're going to marry me? He only nodded because about 60 people were staring at him. The same reason I let out my most lovesick sigh. When his eyes burned into mine, I let them. Laszlo, yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. The cheers were so loud, no one heard the thud of my heels as I ran backstage. And since I slipped out the bathroom window and vanished into the poorly lit alleyway, he never did catch up with me to do all that killing he'd promised. But now, watching Laszlo sleep like a baby, I cannot help wondering why I didn't once think of that night in the past 60 years. And oddly enough, I cannot help wondering if he ever did. Chapter 5. I'd like you to walk me to the hospital, Laszlo says at sundown as we step outside and into the chilly October Manhattan air. He glances around with a very convincing I am but a tourist, new on this planet expression, his face tilted up in wonder toward the skyscrapers. Exhibit number 237 of authentic amnesia. My first instinct is to agree. Eagerly. I let myself contemplate the bliss of dropping him off at the ER, where he'll become someone else's problem. But given Laszlo's not quite human biology, being examined by a doctor could get him in serious trouble. I want to get rid of him, and I'm ready to murder him in a me or him situation, but I wouldn't wish being stuck in some underground lab and experimented upon on my worst enemy. Which, coincidentally, is what Laszlo is. Are you sure you want to go? I ask. You may not have insurance, and hospitals are very expensive. Your memory will probably come back on its own now. But I'll still help you out. I could just take you to your home and... Where do I live? Shit, that I'm not sure. He stops in his tracks, right in the middle of a busy sidewalk, forcing the people behind us to sidestep him. If he were anyone else, New Yorkers would be pushing him into traffic. But Laszlo is tall, covered in striking, unique tattoos, built like a small skyscraper himself. He doesn't exactly ooze agreeability. The most they level at him is a side-eye. Meanwhile, he is ogling me like I should feel guilty for not knowing where his house is. Honestly, I'm not even certain you have a place in the city, I say defiantly. Told you nemesis. Sure, what about my work? The guild. Is that what the pest control company is called? Yup, no pest for the gilded is your slogan. I nod. Surely it'll make the weirdness I just spewed much more convincing. As far as I know, they don't have a physical HQ, which is true enough. His eyebrow lifts. Let's call them then. I don't have their number. I'm sure we can find it online. My snort is artfully disdainful. They are a boutique pest control company, Laszlo. They are not on the interweb. He folds his arms over his chest, clearly ready to throw me into traffic, which, somehow, seems preferable to the sly grin he breaks into a moment later. Okay, since you can't take me to my home or to my workplace, a hotel is the only. I accept your offer. I blink, what offer? To help me out, his eyes gleam. Lead the way, Ethel, I'll follow you to your home. What is this glute that everything seems to be free of? This is the fourth store that claims to sell the best bagels in New York City. And the two things might be unrelated, but I noticed fewer rats in places with more hot dog carts. Is only a selection of the commentary Laszlo treats me to on the way to my place. I find myself having to school the equivalent of a Martian dropped on Earth on the treachery of agglutinating proteins, but I don't mind, because it's better than dwelling on the insanity of my own actions. I am taking a vampire slayer to my home. No, I am leading the oldest and most feared vampire slayer in existence to my place. Despite being a vampire myself, what a time to be undead. At least you still have a home, I tell myself, hoping for a positive spin. Teenage dirtbag burst into flames when Laszlo shoved him into the sun, which means that I won't have to move out of my beloved apartment. The thing about immortality is, it's almost impossible not to build vast amounts of generational wealth. Money hasn't been an issue for me since Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne as the Roman emperor, and I've circled through several accommodations and living arrangements throughout the years, including manors, Transylvanian castles, penthouses, parsonages, farms, temples, cabins in the woods where the mosquitoes tried to drink my blood, casino hotels, lighthouses, nuclear bunkers, and McMansions with more chimneys than bathrooms. What I have learned is that less is more. Well, not true. Less is less. But that's okay, because less is a good thing. Having an arcade room doesn't much enhance my enjoyment of existing, so in the last few decades, I've been gravitating towards small, cozy apartments. Even smaller and cozier now that Laszlo is standing in it. I live alone, I say. He nods distractedly, leaning forward to take a close look at the fern I've been schlepping around from residence to residence for the last 90 years. I know. You do, how? He glances at my pile of frayed Sudoku magazines, then turns to me. How did you know that I don't have 2 spouses and 3 sets of quintuplets? I just do, Ethel, just like I know. His mouth twitches, other things. His smile vanishes when he catches sight of his own face in a mirror. He stares, perhaps shocked by his own good looks, because sadly they are good, and he is handsome. Grossly so, despite the broken lines of his nose, the scars lining his skin, and his face that's not fully symmetrical, like he was painted by an artist self-assured enough to bend the basic rules of anatomy. Did you not remember? I ask. What you look like, I mean. You seem disturbed. He turns to me and blinks in confusion. Not by my face, just my eyes. Oh, well, that expression right there, the glare, it's by far your favorite, your only, some would say. He treats me to a particularly nasty one, and I can't help but chuckle. The color, I thought they'd be, I don't know. He sounds more hesitant than I've heard him before, ever, and I am tempted to tell him that I know why. All slayers have yellow eyes. It's a byproduct of what they're put through to become what they are, which I've heard includes years-long training by teachers who are not particularly nurturing, and a final rite that often ends in a massacre. Amber is the mark of a full-fledged, immortal slayer, whose eternal mission is to destroy vampire bloodlines. Something else I've heard. The Helsing Guild has been struggling to recruit new members because becoming immortal no longer feels like a privilege, especially if given in exchange for spending several lifetimes going after creatures who are likely to stuff your left foot up your ass before snapping your head off. I try not to think about it too much. That slayers, just like vampires, were once humans. We both had to adjust to becoming something new, to the idea of infinity, and that's no easy feat. Maybe Laszlo's self-image is tied to what he looked like before becoming a slayer, and his little brain is still buffering over it. But it's going to catch up any second now, and when it does, he needs to be gone. He can stay the night, sure, but tomorrow I'll kick him out and... Ethel, he asks like he's been saying my name for a while. Sorry, what was that? Is it okay if I take a shower? Is it? Who knows what kind of tattoos he'll find under that shirt and jeans. Maybe his inner thigh is where he keeps a tally of all the vampires he's killed. Inked on his chest, he could have a photorealistic rendering of himself throwing someone who looks eerily like me into the sun. Guess I'll have to run that risk. Sure, towels are in the bathroom. He heads in the direction I'm pointing, and the breadth of his shoulders makes me think of something. Are you hungry? He stops, nods, shit. Great, that's just great. It's great that I'm hungry. Only in the sense that I'm hungry, too. So hungry. I'll go down to the store and pick up something. I dash out of the door like it's being firebombed and head to the Duane Reade downstairs. I am, of course, not hungry, because vampires don't eat. Our bodies reject food in a spectacularly cinematic fashion that would find itself well at home in a vintage horror movie. This is true about any solid or liquid item that isn't human blood, no matter how close they may approach it. I once took a sip of a bonobo and hurled intermittently for the following 6 months. Our species has a clear case of hot girl tummy, and I'm grateful to the 21st century for giving us a final diagnosis. Back in the nunnery, though, I used to be able to cook. Quite well, according to Sister Whitber, even though the abbess would always find some reason to publicly bitch about my meals. Oversalting will not bring you closer to godliness, Sister Ethelthryth. If you are trying to hide your sins behind a curtain of rosemary, you have nearly succeeded. Unfortunately, my last pantry and scullery duties were so many centuries ago, I'm not sure I even remember how to boil water. Which is an issue, since all I can think of purchasing is several boxes of mac and cheese. I add a clean t-shirt and a pair of sweats to the basket, the largest sizes I can find, yet somehow unlikely to fit Laszlo. I run back to my apartment and step inside just as he walks out of the bathroom. Naked. Chapter 6. I guess Laszlo is wearing a towel around his hips. But spiritually, culturally, metaphysically, he feels naked. And yes, he does have ink all over his body, but it seems to be less focused on narrating the misdeeds of Vlad the Impaler and more on commemorating. His childhood, perhaps, family. For the most part, it's that same old Hungarian script as on his neck and arms, but I also spot flowers that I've only ever seen in Eastern Europe, a castle, a coat of arms. On his chest, right on top of his heart, is an ornate Venetian eye mask that looks eerily familiar, but I cannot place it. Why are you holding your breath? He asks after a long stretch of staring, because I've been a little too immobile. Vampires do need air, but given the slow crawl of our metabolism, not nearly as much as humans. I could inhale one day, exhale the following, and still be in peak shape. And yet, I'm suddenly winded. Sorry, I was just. admiring. His eyebrow rises. The artwork, I hurry to add. Sure, right, because it's the first time you've seen it. Yeah, of course it is. Why is he smiling like we're sharing an inside joke? When would I have seen it? He stares as if to challenge me, then folds his arms in a beautiful ripple of muscles and colorful ink. This place feels familiar, but I'm sure you'll tell me that I've never been in your apartment. If he had, I'd be dead. Maybe you did some pest control work for the previous tenant. I must have done a poor job of it, considering. Considering what? He points at a spot above my head. When I turn around, there is a giant. Spider, I scream, running to duck behind Laszlo. It's big and streaked in yellow and gross, and God, I've always hated arthropods. Interesting, Laszlo muses. I whimper, what? An entomologist who is afraid of spiders. He turns to face me. How unusual. Shit, fuck. I straighten and collect myself. It's a very rude assumption, I say haughtily, that just because I study insects, I have to like all types of. I have a lot of scars, he interrupts, conversational, all over my body. That's okay. Some are big. He points at a thick, knotty line that bisects the middle of his abdomen. I wonder how I got this one. It must have been deep. Unless I'm mistaken, I gave it to him in Bath during the 1800s. I was having a grand old time choosing ribbons for my bonnet when he galloped into town and forced me to move to France, where Napoleon was still pursuing his military dreams. I clear my throat. Pest control is a dangerous profession. Must be, he says, meaning, no, it is. Does it hurt? No, but since you asked, something is bothering my left rib. Could you check? Absolutely fucking no, I plan to say. But just like all the other no's I should have said today, it remains stuck in my throat, and I'm somehow sliding my fingers up his flank and over his flank. For a split second, we both freeze, and I'm not the only one who's not breathing. The room falls into an unnatural, layered silence. Laszlo glances down at me with that inquisitive, slightly accusing expression that seems to chew at the lining of my stomach, and I try to return the stare without looking too wide-eyed and guilty, but there is something here. Something that jumps from me to him, that flows from him to me. A current, a heat, a moment of confusion and deluge that clogs my senses, and, you're just not used to touch, I tell myself. Yes, that's it. It must have been a handful of years since the last time. I like to choose very bad people as meals, so I limit my physical contact with them, while Laszlo, he is not food. He is a person, an immortal just like me, surprisingly solid in a world where everything drifts past, disappearing too quickly. It's disorienting is all. Why are your hands so cold? He asks, voice curt and gravelly. Bad circulation, I mumble, hurrying to bend my neck and search for the wound he mentioned. Vitamin deficiencies. Gets chilly at night outside. You just gave me 3 different excuses. I gave 3 reasons, all valid, so get off my shit. There's a shard of glass stuck between your lowest 2 ribs. I think you may have healed around it. Can you take it out? I'd have to cut it open a bit. You de-bleed again. That's fine. It's not fine at all. But I do it, taking one of the 30 switchblades hidden around my place, carving a small cut over the one already healed. I'm not an unfledged youth. My bloodlust is long quenched, and I can control my impulses even when I'm injured or hurt or approaching starvation. The scent of Laszlo does not make me lose my mind because I'm better than that. But God, it's sweet. Always has been. Every time we fought, every blade I sank into his flesh, every breakneck chase, the allure of his blood was there, calling. I've injured and killed plenty of slayers before him, and they all repulsed me, but Laszlo, I have no idea why his specific blood feels so overpoweringly, mouthwateringly delicious, but now that the glass splint is out, I should probably take a step back. Yeah, I'm gonna. Any second now. All new, I say, not meeting his eyes. My voice trembles. The wound is already closing, and I'm scurrying to the sink to wash the drops of his blood off my hands, But once the faucet is on, I cannot help staring at the running water like it's my enemy, because it would be such a waste to give up this precious. It's a truly terrible idea, but my thumb and forefinger are already inside my mouth, licked clean, before I'm even aware of it. The taste of the blood, even just a few scant drops, awakens my sluggish, dormant body in a way gallons of plasma could never accomplish. Heat blooms and fires through my nerve endings. I feel the telltale itch of my fangs pushing against the roof of my mouth, elongating, and I have to grab the edge of the sink so tight, I'll never get my security deposit back. Then Laszlo comes to a stop beside me. "Already feels better," he's saying. "Thanks." Before turning around, I beg my fangs to retreat, promise them lots of firm necks to bite into, very soon if they behave. "You're welcome." I take a fortifying breath and then face him. "I'm going to make food now. Hope mac and cheese is all right. I also got you spare clothes. They're in that paper bag over there." "You are getting warmer," he murmurs, not suggestively. An observation, followed by the back of his hand tracing my cheek. As if to probe a portentous flush with his knuckles, I swallow. "Yeah." "Good," his hand lingers. When it finally drops to his side, his mouth curves downward, like he's displeased to no longer be touching me. "Your body found some B12. "Guess so." I try for my most triumphant smile and start puttering around the kitchen, letting out a relieved breath when he leaves to get dressed. The apartment came furnished, which is the only reason I have kitchen utensils. Unfortunately, by the time Laszlo comes back wearing his new and annoyingly flattering clothes, the stove looks like it just hosted a rave. "I'm sure you're good at other things, Ethel," he says with an undertone of warmth. He wrestles control of the pot so effortlessly, I'm still wondering what happened 10 minutes later when we sit at the table with steaming plates in front of us. There is no damn way my kind and his have ever done this before. Sharing a meal, that is, talking politely. Even just not killing each other. I wish I had a group chat to share this fantastic occurrence with. Even a single friend would do. Maybe I should yell it out of the window and hope the raccoons will hear. "So," he asks while demolishing the food, "where did we meet?" "Me and you." He nods. I play with a few shells trapped within each other. "Well, I'm a little older than you." "By how much?" "Not sure." Laszlo appeared during my 3rd century and was relatively easy to overpower in our first few encounters, which I attributed to him not having fully grown into his slayer strength. How I miss those days. "You were just doing your job," I add, "here in New York." "No, because at the time I wasn't aware of the existence of this continent is not the best answer. I lived in Cordoba back then because it was one of the largest cities in the world, and I desperately tried to go unobserved. By then, I was very much an adolescent vampire, still sorting myself out. I had retained an appreciation for human life, was years from deconstructing the Christian notions of good and evil the abbess had inculcated, and after every meal I drank, I spent several regretful weeks in feverish prayers for forgiveness. I hated killing people so much, I'd resorted to skulking around places where healthy humans might drop almost dead at any second, in the hope of finding a guilt-free meal. Jousting tournaments, for the most part. Pathetic, I know. In the suburbs, I lie. "You were with your boss, or mentor, or something." An older slayer whose name I never learned. He quit shortly after. I killed him, but he so had it coming. Were we nemeses from the start? It's obvious that the question is meant to make fun of me, and it's obvious that he wants me to notice. So I pretend not to. Pretty much. In fact, I remember his eyes on me from across the square, constant, never leaving. I thought, stupidly, mistakenly, disappointingly, that maybe that handsome young man was attracted to me. In less than 2 minutes, not only had I concocted a backstory for us, he had seen me at the market and become infatuated despite my intimidating riches and beauty, but also a future. I would reassure him that his lack of wealth mattered nothing to me. We would talk for hours and fall deeply for each other. I would confess my vampiric nature, and after a brief spell of appallment, he would realize that not even my monstrous character could stand in the way of our love. Then, forever would begin. As I said, I was very much an adolescent. Still, this was an uncharacteristically pipe-wide dream, even for me. But when Laszlo came after me brandishing one of his favorite weapons, two sickle blades tied together with a metal chain, I wised up real quick. It was one-sided, he tells me after he's done chewing. From you. What? The dislike. I assure you it was not. And I assure you, when I look at you, I feel anything but that. A pause. Why are you not eating? Oh, I was so hungry, I scarfed down a candy bar at the register, I recite. It's the one excuse I could come up with, and he doesn't buy it, but he accepts my plate when I push it in his direction. The sweet heat of his blood still churns through my body. Why did you become an entomologist? Christ, I can't remember the last time someone asked me this many questions. It wasn't really planned. How do you become something without planning too? Well, Laszlo, sometimes a gang of bandits decides to rob your nunnery, because why not? And you see what's happening to your sisters, and decide that you'd rather throw yourself out of the window than allow the raiders to come any closer to you, because why not? And a vampire passing by spots you in your last moments and decides to suck you dry, because why not? And then you wake up in the middle of the night, and for some reason, you're a damn vampire too. It wasn't my decision, I tell him instead. It wasn't my maker's decision either. Even vampires are not sure why some people turn and others don't. There are necessary conditions. The person has to be on the brink of death but strong enough to sustain the transformation, and some of the vampire's blood has to be ingested by them, but it's not as simple as that. Many tried and failed. Many didn't mean to welcome new souls into the night, but here I am. You enjoy it, though. I shouldn't, at least that's the stereotype, right? Immortals are supposed to be sullen and full of regrets, always a hairbreadth away from stepping into the sun and get it all over with. But mal de vivre, meaninglessness, pain, and suffering, they're not really my thing. I consider myself lucky because I'm not prone to ennui. It may sound foolish, but I never get bored of watching the trees change, of seeing girls walk around hand in hand while giggling over a text from a crush, of finding a good poem. Immortality can mean deep thoughts and philosophical pondering and the relentless pursuit of knowledge, sure, but for me it was always the opposite. I found it so easy, falling into the day-to-day. The humdrum, staring out of the window with an empty mind. A crossword, a walk in the rain, a well-written book. Flowers blooming. Perhaps the abbess was right, and I romanticize insignificant things too much. Although, if I recall correctly, the way she put it was more like, life is not a brightly painted knight's tale, Sister Ethelthryth. Stop wasting time on fancies and follies and go scrub the privy, child. Still, I've learned to live in the moment and to be happy, even on my own. I've learned to treasure little joys, like making other people's lives better by lending a hand or a smile, doing small talk, laughing at bad puns. Sometimes I'm lonely. Sometimes I want more, whatever that means. Not everything is ideal, but I'm capable of finding my own meaning. Yes, I say firmly. I didn't choose it, but I enjoy it. I feel the same, Laszlo says after a pensive beat. My spine straightens. Have you remembered something? No, but what you said about becoming something without wanting and still trying to make the best out of it. It makes sense, on a visceral level. Oh. We finish eating in silence, and by we, I mean he efficiently shovels food inside his mouth, and I play with the worn edges of the place mat I found in the drawers. Afterward, he stands and heads for the sink to do the dishes like it's a reflex, a simple courtesy after a meal. I cannot help but wonder who taught him that. Maybe he is married. Maybe during the Reign of Terror, while I was milling around the falling guillotines to get a good drink out of people who'd have died anyway, hate wasting food, Laszlo was having a beachside wedding with a colleague. Maybe his partner is currently worried sick about him, tossing and turning in the bed they usually share, because he hasn't come home, and my train of thought stops, and my head explodes into a panic. "You okay?" he asks, still drying the plates we used as though he heard my entire brain detonate. "Yeah," I say, "but no, I'm not okay, because I just remembered something very important. There are no beds in this apartment." Chapter 7. Vampires don't sleep. It's part of the whole curse thing: no rest, no quiet, no respite from our evil deeds. We are condemned to an eternity of staring at empty walls and reflecting on what we have done, all in the hope of atoning for our very existence. The possibilities for self-flagellation are endless, but my white-hot take is that I've done nothing wrong, at least not since I began observing a strictly assholetarian diet. So I politely excused myself from the pity party and retooled that time for playing Sudoku. While my apartment does have a bedroom, mostly packed with clothes, books, and the equipment I have accumulated over years of taking up, and almost instantly quitting all kinds of crafts, it doesn't have a bed, which I realize now is only slightly less suspicious than putting a coffin in my living space. "You are a horse," Laszlo says. He surveys the room from behind me, cross-armed. "How do you remember that horses sleep standing up, but not what gluten is?" Maybe gluten is another one of my nemeses. He gives a skeptical glance to my stack of friendship bracelets kits, then moves back to the living room. "You sleep on the couch," he says in his usual pragmatic, matter-of-fact tone. Not asking but informing, I decide to piggyback on that. "Of course. But it's okay, you can take it. I think I have an air mattress. Fun fact, I know I do not, so I can." "No." I halt, momentarily speechless. "No. We both sleep on the couch," he declares. "Together. We can't sleep together. Are there laws against it?" "No." "Then we sleep together." God damn this man. "No, we don't. What if you have a family? How would your partner feel about that? How would your kids react to daddy sharing a love seat with?" "I'm not married." His tone is final. "And I have no children. Some things a man just knows about himself." My eyebrow lifts. "Really? Really?" He turns away and starts stripping the cushions off the couch to make it more spacious. "Out of curiosity," I ask, peeved, "what else does a man just know about himself, despite a dire case of sudden-onset global amnesia? The date of his last colonoscopy, the best brand of jigsaw, how to build a ham radio, what the hell are you?" He is, quite clearly, gripping my wrist and pulling me toward the couch. It should trigger my fight reflex and make me headbutt him in the nose, but for some reason it doesn't. A moment later, I'm horizontal with him, wedged tight between the length of his body and the back of the couch. "Oh," I hear myself say. Just that. "Oh." Laszlo's reply is a vague grunt, followed by a tightening of his grip. I can feel every chord of his muscles pressing against me, and it should be a new and destabilizing experience, but it seems disturbingly familiar. He and I, after all, have been this close before, on the numerous occasions that he tried to kill me. I don't think this is. "Hush," he says gently. "He's as hot as the sun's core." I must be the opposite, because he murmurs something about my icy limbs and how my poor body must have misplaced all its vitamins, and what can we do to find it again? If you only knew, I think darkly, trying to free myself without too much conviction. The truth is, this is very enjoyable, being surrounded, pressed in, bundled. It's evolutionary. My kind was programmed to enjoy tiny, suffocating spaces where the sun cannot reach. And boy, does this specific slayer provide. It's cozy. And cozy is pleasant. And pleasant, the little things that give joy, is something one learns to value when approaching 1.4 millennia alive. And yet, by doing this, you're probably destroying your decades-long marriage, I mumble against the unwieldy pillow of his biceps. "I just hope you have nice feet." "Why?" "You're going to have to sell lots of pictures of them to afford a divorce lawyer." He hums, patient, clearly confident about the state of his toes. "Seriously, Laszlo, This is a bad idea. Stop fidgeting, I'm dozing off. Didn't you sleep all day? I mumble, perhaps more harshly than he deserves, considering his recently concussed status. Maybe too late, it occurs to me that I should pretend to breathe. Listen, since neither of us knows whether you are in a relationship, I think that. An impatient sigh interrupts me, and he crowds me even more against the cushions, which presses him close enough to me that, oh my God, is that a stake in his pocket, or is he just glad to see me? Ethel, stop it. Stop what? I'm only. The bugs, the job, the nemesis stuff. You don't have to tell me the truth, but you can stop pretending. Pretending what? His chest heaves. I might not remember my name or anything about who I am, but I could never be near you and not know exactly what you are to me. A second later, he falls asleep, leaving me to stare at the chevron pattern of the couch for 8 straight hours as I try not to enjoy the heat of his body against mine, desperate to decipher exactly what his last words meant. Chapter 8. The following morning I realize that, to my utmost shock, Laszlo will need to be fed once more. And in 5 hours, perhaps even fewer, considering his size, we'll be here all over again. Because his kind needs food multiple times a day. Absurd. About half an hour before sunrise, I disentangle myself from him and sneak out to the corner bodega. I buy eggs, bacon, vegetables, pasta, fruit, and something called Pop-Tarts that must have been invented while I was blinking. I stroll back home, baffled that human society has managed to evolve past the hunter-gatherer stage, given the farcical amount of time they dedicate to eating. Meanwhile, I think with a self-satisfied pat on my own back, I last drank 2 weeks ago, a guy who worked as a fixer for the Nestlé executive board, and barring unforeseen circumstances, I won't need to be topped off for 3 or 4 more. Although, something within me asks, wouldn't a sip of Laszlo be good? Delectable. Thick and rich and unlike anything you've ever tasted. It would sit heavy in your belly, power your nerve endings, and you'd finally feel so warm that I mentally slap the idiotic voice inside my head, grateful for the distraction when someone asks, trick or treat. I glance down and down to find an adorable little girl staring up at me. She's wearing a black cape and plastic fangs, pearl white against her dark skin. Someone drew a shiny, remarkably realistic trickle of blood at the corner of her mouth. Next to her, a blonde boy holds something that closely resembles a wooden stake. I'm so sorry, one of the adult women standing behind them says. Hey, you two, we're on our way to school, and trick-or-treating is not for the middle of a busy street. I don't mind, I say with a smile, crouching down to the children's height. I like your costumes, I tell them. Thank you, the girl says solemnly. I'm going to be a vampire when I grow up. And I'm going to be a vampire hunter, says the boy. And we're going to get married. I try not to choke on my tongue. Good luck with that, I mutter, because they're definitely going to need it. I dig the box of frosted s'mores Pop-Tarts out of my Save the Bees reusable shopping bag and split the contents evenly between their satchels. Judging from the hug they exchange, the pastries must be a hit. Sorry, Laszlo, but they never pledged to maul me and eradicate my people, so they deserve the tarts that pop more than you do. Back upstairs, I find him awake, standing in the small kitchen. You went out early, he says, like it's totally normal for him to wait for me shirtless and freshly showered. You're a morning person. Huh, yeah, sure. You are well rested. Right. I'm starting to find it more amusing than irritating, the way he states things about me instead of asking questions, and that worries me a bit. Only slightly less than the fact that he has already drawn and latched together all the blackout curtains, despite sunrise being 5 minutes away. How did you know? You are allergic to the sun, he simply says, like it's an explanation, and then gets up to take the bag from me and begins putting away the groceries. He's been here for 12 hours, and we somehow have a routine. I need to get him out of here stat. You hungry? I ask as he lines boxes of pasta in the empty cupboard. Very. I'll make some eggs then. It might, take me a while. Maybe you can have this in the meantime. I throw an apple in his direction, which turns out to be a mistake when, in the blink of an eye, Laszlo grabs a knife from the wooden block and uses it to slash the fruit into 4 pieces, while it's still in the air. The chunks hit the ground with dull thuds, and we stare at them for a long stretch of silence. Then I clear my throat. I didn't know that an apple murdered your family. I did not mean to do that. He scratches the back of his neck. Right, no, I know. You cut the apple into 4 identical pieces by accident. It was a reflex. He twirls the knife in his fingers with a dexterity that would leave me less unsettled if I didn't know he developed it to kill me, specifically. But, he sheathes the blade inside the wooden block. If I asked you why I'm so good with a knife, would you tell me that it's because of my pest control background? I force myself to swallow. There is something painfully heavy about lying to someone who knows that he's not being told the truth, but what alternative do I have? I can't imagine any other reason. This time his sigh is barely perceptible, but his lips are thin. Then I won't ask Ethel. He crouches to pick up the apple, and I get to work on his eggs, wondering when I got so bad at gaslighting people. I didn't know those eggs murdered your family, he tells me after I smash the 3rd shell against the edge of a bowl. The last time I made an omelet, I didn't have vampiric strength, and adjusting is taking a minute. But I've got it now, I've got it, I protest. But before I can redeem my kitchen skills, Laszlo is standing behind me, gently prying the eggs from my fingers, taking over. His arms bracket me on each side, and his chin brushes the crown of my head as he works with a cursory, expert grace that I find equally pleasing and irritating. I should stiffen and push him away, but my body has already gotten used to being surrounded by his. The strength, the warmth, the sensation of being part of something. I pretend not to notice the way his lips press against the back of my head before he moves to the stove to scramble a number of eggs that could feed a family of 5 for 2 weeks. I had a dream, he tells me once we're sitting at the table. For this meal, my cover story is, not a breakfast person. Laszlo didn't bother reacting, as though he knows that every single thing coming out of my mouth is likely a lie. What kind of dream? I don't know, maybe it was a memory. You were there, though. My stomach sinks. Were you chopping me into 4 pieces with a kitchen knife? We were dancing. I slump relieved, dancing in a club. He shoots me a dirty look like he knows what a club is and wouldn't be caught dead inside one. More formal than that. He chews some more. I liked your dress. A smile starts, turns into a private thing between Laszlo and his own thoughts. A lot. We've never danced together, so I don't think it was a memory, I say, unsure whether to be embarrassed or relieved or flattered. Anyway, I assume you are eager to return to your own home, so. No, he says, final, happy, at ease. By all means, Laszlo, do overstay your welcome, I think. There's no real heat in it, though, which is stupid. The more he sticks around, the better he'll know me, and the easier it'll be to track me down once he regains his memories. I grit my teeth and plop myself down on the couch, snatching the first Sudoku magazine I come across. This is not harmless. Once he remembers who he is, I'm going to have to move, and... The cushion dips as Laszlo makes himself comfortable next to me, still half undressed. The mask tattoo under his heart shifts with every little movement, daring me to remember where I've seen it before. Then he grabs one of my puzzle magazines and a pencil and begins filling in a Sudoku grid with impressive speed. I blink, then ask, pathetically excited, "You like Sudoku?" "What?" "The square thing you're doing." I lean closer. "I didn't think you." I snap my mouth shut, reopen it. "Did you just write down random numbers?" "And I do not see what you enjoy about it." "About what?" "Coming up with rows of numbers. It's poor entertainment." No, there is an actual no. I spend the next 2 hours teaching a vampire slayer who was created to wipe out my bloodline how to correctly fill in a Sudoku grid. He's not at all bad at it, and I hate to acknowledge it. So, this is what we do during the day, he says after a while. I frown. We don't usually spend our days together. He smiles like I didn't even speak. I'm serious. We rarely. I drift off because he's taking a strand of my hair between his fingers and rubbing it gently, watching the flow of light orange across his own pale skin. His mouth murmurs a few words in another language, one that I speak, but I pretend not to because this is not. It shouldn't. What is even? It's casual, the way he tucks a lock of hair behind my ear. His touch is at once new and familiar, scorching and gentle. Strawberry blonde, he says to himself, then asks me, we rarely what? Vampires don't blush. We simply don't have enough blood for it. I thank whoever cursed us for that small grace, glance away, and mumble, nothing. The rest of the day is. I wish I could say that it's terrible, that I consider walking into the sun just to escape Laszlo's suffocating presence. But that's not the way it goes. He is surprisingly restful to be around, even when he teases me for holding a spoon like it's an object of alien provenance, even when I sneak back up from the basement with my dried laundry, and he watches me fold my lingerie with a smile that says, I know who you wear it for. In the afternoon, he collects all his weapons and begins to clean them. Have you? No, I have not remembered, he says, but I feel an itch. An itch, I repeat, but I watch him polish and oil, trying not to jolt at every sound of clanking metal. My understanding is that the Helsing Guild doesn't micromanage, and that every slayer is allowed their weapon of choice. Or 5. Given that silver, wooden stakes through the heart, or particularly garlicky Olive Garden dishes have no effect on us, and that only the sun can truly kill us, intelligent slayers, to my constant despair, Laszlo is one of them, tend to prioritize tools that will incapacitate us. Steel boluses trip and bind us, while blades can cut off limbs and make it difficult to run away. Since Laszlo has done both things to me, multiple times, I cannot help but startle when he asks, mid-sharpen. What do I do, Ethel? I blink, force myself to calm down. I told you. Ethel, he holds my gaze, still wetting his dagger with expert strokes. What do I really do? I bite my lower lip. I'm going to have to lie to him again. When, exactly, did that begin to feel so abominable? You're right, I wasn't truthful. The reason we know each other is. He stares, patient. You're a CPA, Laszlo. You do my taxes. He sighs, shakes his head, but his mouth twitches. I remember why we were in that building now. You do. To go over your itemized deductions. Precisely. He looks at me, amused. I look at him in pretty much the same way. And when I can no longer stand the tension of it, I ask him, do you, maybe wanna play cards? He immediately puts the blade away, like sharing an activity with me is the only thing he has ever desired, and it's nice, kind of, shared, pleasant, not really what I usually do during the day, which is, maybe not lonely, but definitely on my own. This is different, playing cards with Laszlo, watching him realize that clearly we are both very competitive people. Laughing, I can make my own meaning. I can find my own joy, but there is a different kind of happiness in this companionship. A sense of something coming, like the breeze picking up before a storm. It's possible that I am, like the abbess said, just a fanciful, too distractible girl. But for the first time in nearly 1.5 millennia, I forget to keep track of time, and I don't feel the need to run outside the exact moment the sun has set. Chapter 9. Laszlo's response to the hordes of kids wearing costumes, adults sitting on their stoops giving out candy, and jack-o'-lanterns casting rich golden light across the neighborhood, is a simple, unfazed, straightforward nod. I'm not sure whether he remembers what Halloween is or just thinks that this is what goes on every night in the West Village, but he's game, and I cannot help but laugh. What sharp teeth you have, he tells a group of little vampires who hold out their baskets to him. Then he distributes some of the cash I found in the back pocket of his jeans before washing them, all $100 bills. I mouth sorry to the children's baffled mothers and quickly pull Laszlo away. My people are, unsurprisingly, highly represented in this year's costuming choices. I glance at Laszlo, wondering if seeing them is jogging his memory, but all he says is, "I'm hungry." He eats a hot dog, then a candied apple. Not once does he ask me if I'm hungry, too, or if I want a single bite. I think he's done with my bullshit, and I think that he'd rather I stay quiet than lie, so I do. When a pack of sexy slimers tries to step between us, he grabs my hand to pull me closer and doesn't let go, not even when a fortune teller tries to sell us a couple's reading. "We're not a couple," I explain just as he loftily proclaims, "I am a man and I make my own fortune." The teller's eyes fall pointedly to where his fingers are closed around mine. "No matter," she says, "your fates are already intertwined." I scowl and let Laszlo drag me away into the night, watching the crowd as it transitions from adorable children to adults in skimpy costumes, drinking questionable alcohol mixes from poorly disguised cups. "I like it," he says when we dip into a narrow, semi-deserted alleyway to avoid the throng. "We'll do this often." "Halloween is only once a year," I say, leaning back against the wall. "By the next, you'll have remembered enough of who you are to spend it with whomever it is that you usually do." He stares down at me, patiently amused, arms crossed, steps closer. "Just tell me, Ethel." "Tell you what we are." I straighten a little. "We are people, I thought you knew that." "What we are to each other," he clarifies, a note of "come on, Ethel, don't be obtuse" in his tone that I should take more offense to. But I am being obtuse, and he is being remarkably forbearing. "Should I redefine work nemesis for you?" I ask archly. His smile just widens. "I think you're tired, too." "Of what?" "The lies." I look down at my shoes, back up. "How are you so sure that?" "I told you, Ethel. I know how I feel about you. And I know how you feel, too." "And what would that?" He bends toward me slowly enough that I could conceivably stop him, but I don't care to conceive of it before his lips touch mine or after. I've kissed and been kissed by many people. None, however, who were, fundamentally, at an atomic level like me. None whose feel and scent and body I'd learned over centuries, through endless battles and close calls. None who were anything like Laszlo. That's the problem, I think. After a while on this earth, one rarely experiences new sensations. But nothing has ever felt as good as Laszlo's legs slipping between mine and pinning me to the wall. As the warmth of his hands closing around my lower back and my nape to turn me into him. As his tongue sliding against mine with no hesitation. I can't make us stop. Instead, I reach up, fist his shirt, and deepen the kiss. I press myself to his body and listen to the faint, pleased groan he lets out. I rub my core against the meat of his thigh while his breath hitches inside my ear, and he says, "Ethel." It's not my real name, not the one the real Laszlo, the Laszlo who remembers, likes to use. And that, at last, is the bucket of ice I need. I push him away, both my hands against his rib cage. He stumbles backward, breathing fast, his expression half delighted, half outraged. "Shit." "No, I know," I shake my head. "This is wrong. I can't do this to you." He frowns. "You don't need to do anything. I do things to you." "You, I want to bury my face in my hands. You don't even know who I am. You don't remember who you are. I am basically deceiving you, and I know that you are odd and a terrible liar and not good at being secretive, but I don't care." "Well, you should care. You cannot consent to being with someone who hasn't been open with you about their identity, and there is nothing that I could discover about you or about myself that would make me want to do this any less." His tone is arrogant and self-assured and brooks no argument. I hate it. Sadly, I could see myself loving it. He steps closer once again. "I know we have done this before, Ethel." No, we haven't. How do you even?" I know your smell, I know your skin, your hair. It's all familiar. I have it all memorized. And I dream of you of this. So many dreams, all so different, we must have done it a million times in a million different ways. Tell me what you're hiding from me, let's get this over with, and then let's do it a million more times. He stops when a masked man trips drunkenly inside our alleyway. Not now, he orders the intruder before turning back to me. Actually, sir, I say, shrill, panicky, eager to end the conversation, this place is all yours. My friend and I were just getting ready to go our separate ways. Laszlo rolls his eyes, but the man in the Edward Cullen mask nods his thanks and walks closer. And that's when something starts nagging at me. There's an odd familiarity to his gait, to the grace of his movements, to the speed of. It's you, I whisper. I barely have time to shove Laszlo out of the way before the vampire who tried to kill me 2 nights ago attacks me again. Chapter 10. It may have been a little over-optimistic about the death of teenage dirtbag vampire. In that sense, the Halloween crowd is both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, the loud music and festive atmosphere are noisy enough to cover the sounds of our fight, which guarantees that people won't interfere and accidentally get themselves torn to pieces. On the other, it means that I'm on my own. A problem, since despite my first impression of him, the vampire trying to kill me is very, very strong. When we met before in Central Park, he must have been injured, or starving. He has now recovered, and his assault is becoming harder and harder to fend off. He attacks me silently, precisely, with none of the sloppiness of 2 nights ago. He's not of my bloodline, but with power like this, I have to scrap my teenage dirtbag assessment and admit that he has to be at least as old as I am. We are that evenly matched. I stab at him with my dagger and try to overpower him once and for all, letting out a frustrated grunt when he disarms me. A group of teenagers walk past the mouth of the alleyway, glance at the struggling outline of our bodies, and let out lewd, suggestive noises. Get a fucking room, losers. It may look like we're making out, but I just want to get the vampire off me and go check on Laszlo, who hasn't gotten up since I shoved him against the wall. I put all my might behind a powerful push and manage to throw adult dirtbag inside a dumpster. When he doesn't immediately reemerge, I take a second to run to Laszlo and kneel at his side, pushing back the hair on his brow. He is unconscious, and my stomach drops. I know he can't die, not from this, but he could forget even more. His brain is clearly susceptible to anything, really, and my stomach tightens with worry and regret and something that feels a lot like desperation. Are you okay? I shake him to no avail. Laszlo, A clawed hand grips the back of my sweater, pulling me away. The world goes upside down, and a moment later the vampire is on top of me. You are in my territory, he growls, lips and tongue mangled by his own teeth. His eyes are milky white all over, with the sole exception of his pupils. I was wrong. He's not an adolescent, and he's not my age. This vampire is at least a millennium older than me. His power is unstable and impossible to predict. The realization hits me when he tears at my jugular with a swift strike of his fangs, causing my blood to erupt out of my skin. The pain eviscerates me, and I scream. My neck throbs like it's on fire. He's fucking ancient. That's why he can take me so easily. I try to kick him off, but he has me pinned underneath him. What the fuck is wrong with you? I hiss at him. You should have left when you had a chance. Fuck you, I was here first. His smile is shark-toothed, as if every single one of his teeth is a canine. You'll be here last, too. He opens his maw wider, spit and blood mixing as his head bends over to strike my vein again, and it rolls away. His head, that is. It wobbles above the vampire's neck, dangles forward, and then rolls away. The vampire collapses on top of me in a puddle of viscous fluids. I push his lithe body away, smelling the metallic scent of blood as it blends with the rotting sweetness of the trash behind us, then scramble to my feet before his juices can soak through my clothes. What the? That's when I notice that Laszlo has regained consciousness. He stands behind the remains of ancient dirtbag, a dagger in his grip. But he's not staring at his handiwork. No, he's staring at me. Thank you, I want to say. And, are you okay? And he's not dead yet. We need to expose every part of him to the sun. But there is a light in his eyes, new and old at the same time, that tells me that there's no need for me to explain anything. He already knows all of this. Killing vampires is second nature to him, first maybe. I open my mouth. Then, unsure of what to say, close it. Suddenly, I feel like crying, and I'm not certain I know why. Until Laszlo says, Ethelthrith. My name, the one my mother gave me. Probably because it was all the rage at the time, over 1,000 years ago. It can mean only one thing. That's why, without any warning, I charge Laszlo and Eddie and begin to attack him. Chapter 11. Over the centuries, I've battled Laszlo more times than I can count. If there is one thing I'm certain of, it's that, when it comes to physical strength and fighting skills, he and I are equals. That's why it makes absolutely no sense that only a couple of seconds pass between the time I start running in his direction, and the moment the blade of my dagger touches the ink wrapped around his neck. Sure, he's a little banged up, but I'm still bleeding profusely from where the vampire gnawed at me, which means that we're both in poor shape. And yet, here I am, looking up at him with my knife at his neck, trapping his larger body against the wall with no difficulty. I have, at last, the opportunity to excise him from my life once and for all. It would be so freeing. It might take 50, even 100 years before the guild finds someone else to hunt my bloodline. It would earn me decades of not watching my back, of not having to move to a new continent because my hideout was discovered, of peace. And yet, I hesitate. Do it now. He's not the person who snored in your ear at 2 a.m. who pretended to no longer understand the rules of cribbage once you started beating him. He's not the man who kissed you. He wouldn't have done any of it, not if he'd remembered what you are. He finds you disgusting. He hates you. His entire purpose is to eliminate you, which doesn't explain why his eyes, all of a sudden, seem so soft. Or the fact that instead of pushing me away, instead of hitting back with his own weapons and his own strength, he touches me tenderly. One hand lifts to cup my face, and he gently thumbs my cheekbone. What are you? My voice trembles. I can't bring myself to finish the question. Ethelthrith, he says, calm. His voice is the same as it was before the attack, and yet completely different. He is the man who saved my life 2 days ago, the man who kissed me, the man who cleaned up the mess I made in my kitchen, but also something more. If you want to kill me, I'm not going to stop you. But first, I'm going to need you to tell me something. I feel disoriented, as though someone is spinning me around blindfolded to make fun of the way I stumble to my knees. There must be something I'm missing. I certainly don't know why I let him lean even closer to me, his own movements causing my knife to press against his throat and break the skin. The scent of his blood melts into me, tantalizingly sweet. His lips find my ear, and he asks, "Where do you think I'll go once I'm dead?" And then it's my turn to remember. Chapter 12. His Excellency, Duca Aurelio Corsini, had been, true to his title, an excellent man. An eccentric one, too. I had known him for approximately 50 years, and was therefore wholly unsurprised that only 3 months after his death, his daughters had decided to throw a masquerade ball in his honor. It was, without a doubt, what he would have wanted. The Duca and I first met when he was a child. He had been traveling the Florentine countryside, on his way back from an excursion in the Apennines, when he and his escorts were attacked by a group of bandits. Normally, I wouldn't have interfered with the affairs of the human aristocracy. But it was dusk, and I was hungry. The Ducato may have been no friend of mine, but I did not approve of this specific gang of bandits. Torturing nearly 20 people with a semi-orgiastic relish was, simply put, in bad taste. So I killed half a dozen outlaws, drank from them well past the moment of satiety, and when the last drained body fell to the ground, I noticed that not everyone from the ducal party was as dead as I had thought. "Thank you," a young boy said to me, his voice surprisingly firm. He couldn't have been older than 7 or 8. He ought to be screaming for the Tuscan hills. Instead, he held the hand of a rapidly cooling female corpse. "They were very bad to my nurse. I'm glad you were bad to them." The reasoning made sense to me, and I was too pleasantly full of fresh blood to panic at having been found out. In the moonlit night, I could see a shimmer of defiant tears in the boy's eyes, and I took a liking to him. So I asked, "Would you like me to escort you back to your home?" "Please, my lady." And that was it. When I dropped him off outside the gates of the palazzo, he asked if I would come to him again. "Please," he added, and only because of that I promised that I would. Once he turned 15, I visited, convinced that he'd have forgotten all about me. But he remembered, and he welcomed me at his court. He never asked me to explain my actions or my nature. He never brought up what he'd seen or my extraordinary, never-ending youth. And yet, he knew I was not like him. He would ask me questions about history and the meaning of life. He would seek my company and my conversation. He extended friendship and protection without demanding anything in return. It was refreshing. Throughout the centuries, there had been a handful of humans to whom I had shown my true nature. Alas, faced with the reality of immortality, people either deemed it a symbol of evil or they demanded a piece of it for themselves. Not the Duca, who knew me for who I was and offered nothing but acceptance, making me feel as though I was something more than a figment of people's nightmares. I loved him dearly, and I knew that I would miss him. Therefore, the least I could do was to put a traditional Colombina mask over my eyes, show up for the odd ball his daughters were throwing in his honor, and watch the attendees get wine drunk as they shared improper stories about his life. "Were you a personal acquaintance of the Duca?" a deep voice asked, Italian but accented. Someone else who had traveled from far away to pay their respects. I was leaning back against the stone wall in the great hall. When I turned around, I found a tall, broad-backed man whom I hadn't noticed before. He wore a charcoal cloak, a matching three-cornered hat, and a blackened golden volto mask that covered his entire face. My first instinct was inexplicable and yet very clear, to excuse myself and step away. Go back to the inn where I had already decided I would spend the day. But it was just that instinct. It lasted a fraction of a second, and then I subdued it. "I was, yes, you." He nodded but said, "A friend of a friend might be a better definition. You must have known him better than I did." I smiled, even as a pang of sadness spread through my chest. He was a very kind man, a rare thing. Kind men. Kindness in general. The ensemble, which comprised a lute, a harpsichord, and a viola, began playing a beautiful, slow piece, clearly intending for the guests to dance a saraband. When the man offered me his hand, I briefly hesitated, surprised. The steps I'd learned were probably 1 or 2 decades old by now, and I was unlikely to keep up with the rest of the dancers. On the other hand, the Duca would have been highly amused by the mess I was going to make of it. "Please," I said, smiling, and sure enough, it was obvious from the start that I should have declined. But half the attendees were in their cups, and the man guided me through the steps until I was less of a disaster, his assured hands pointing me in the right direction. Once, I even felt him grip my waist, stopping me from walking into a young girl dressed like a harlequin. Perhaps I should have gasped at his daring, but I couldn't find it in me to mind. When it was the turn of the couple next to us to take the stage, he asked quietly, "Was the Duca your lover?" There was some impropriety to the question, but I assumed that the man had overindulged, or that he was simply honoring the Italian custom of being nosy. Either way, I didn't take offense. I enjoyed the deep rasp of his voice, the line of his shoulders, his quiet questions. So much so, I found myself wondering, when was the last time I had taken a lover? Years. Decades. What about the last time I had considered taking a lover? No, we didn't suit that way. He was more special than that to me. A friend cannot be more special than a lover. I turned to glance up at the man, uselessly so, given that I could not glimpse a single inch of his skin, making it impossible to read his intent. Moreover, I couldn't very well tell him why the Duca was so unique a presence in my life. Still, I attempted to explain. Some lives run invisibly, undetected by most, and when a person comes along who sees those lives for what they are, who acknowledges their reality, who reminds people that there is value in different ways of existing, a minute of that is worth more than 1,000 nights with a lover. Wouldn't you agree? It was our time to dance again, but as I stepped forward, the man froze in place. Even when I turned around, reaching for his forearm to remind him of our turn, he remained immobile. In the shadowy socket of the mask, his eyes were dark and inscrutable. "Is everything well?" I asked, but he didn't answer, nor did he move. All he said was, "Where do you think he went?" "Who?" "The Duca. Where do you think he is now that he's dead?" Oh, I bit the inside of my cheek, uncertain. Truth was, I had no idea. Some might assume that immortality would offer insight into the afterlife, but that was not the case for me. I had no idea whether something existed past the current realm. If it did, I doubted that it would welcome the likes of me, the cursed. I don't know, but I am not convinced that it matters. "You are." I shook my head. The Duca was a kind man who earned the love and gratitude of many. He will live forever through the memories of those who outlast him. I will remember him for as long as I live, and as long as I carry him in my heart, he will be here, with us. I smiled at the man, but he didn't smile back. And when I next turned from him, he disappeared into the night. Chapter 13. I'm not surprised that it took me so long to make the connection between the man at the ball and Laszlo. Yes, the mask tattooed on his heart is an exact copy of the one I'd worn. But I've lived countless lives, and objects tend to fade faster from my mind than people or experiences. In fact, I rarely thought about our conversation in the pleasure gardens over the last few centuries, and certainly never beyond the occasional spark left behind by a missed connection. An impression of regret. The feeling of lost opportunities, nothing of much importance. My arm falls to my side, and I step backward, almost tripping over the already regenerating body of the vampire. Laszlo just looks at me, wiping the blood oozing from the shallow cut on his neck. His posture is unconcerned, almost relaxed. I trace my own injury with my palm, feeling my skin as it rapidly mends itself. "Why were you there?" I ask, still reeling. The parade is in full swing, brass instruments and hollers, interrupted by the occasional recording of eerie organ tunes. 2 nights ago, when you saved me, how did you realize I was in danger? He gives me a silent look, one that demands to know, if you're not stupid, why are you acting like it? Then he kneels down to take care of the vampire's body, bending his head like a soldier who's being knighted. He is, once again, leaving himself at my mercy. He remembers who I am, who he is, and yet he does nothing to protect himself from me. "I think you know," he says, "and if you don't, I'm sure you can figure it out." I swallow. "How long have you?" "A while." I shake my head, incredulous. You are going to have to be more specific." I watch him easily hack the vampire into smaller pieces of meat, tiny enough that he won't be able to regenerate before dawn. "About what?" With a scrunch of his nose and a pragmatic shrug, he kicks the pieces over to where the sun will hit them as soon as it rises. About everything." He sighs deeply, as though my inability to read his mind is an inconvenience, but one he will try to deal with out of the grace of his heart. He glances at the slice of revelry we can see from the alleyway, then back at me. "I don't think here is the best location to do this." "Where then?" "I have a place. Here in New York." He nods. "Where?" His smile is small and wistful. "Across from yours, actually." Across is, somehow, an understatement. He lives in the house facing my apartment building, exactly 2 sidewalks and a narrow crossroad away from me. I linger at the door, a little bewildered, and don't follow him inside, even when he looks at me with that half-reproachful, half-impatient, scolding expression that I'm becoming all too fond of. If I wanted you dead, you would be dead. That is very presumptuous of you. You could try, but I would. Ethelthrith, he says, absolute. Tired too, I clear my throat. I can't. He frowns, I can't come in. Unless you formally, verbally invite me. His eyes widen as though Laszlo Enietti, guild slayer extraordinaire, had forgotten about one of our most dangerous limitations. Right, my bad. He clears his throat. Ethelthrith, nothing would make me happier than having you with me here or in any other place that I will call home for as long as I live. Please come in. I try not to gasp, but it's a blanket invitation, incredibly difficult to take back and therefore stupid to extend. He must know that. Suddenly, stepping inside feels dangerous for a whole new set of reasons. I do it anyway. Laszlo couldn't quite see inside my apartment from his home, and I doubt he spent his days observing my every move. But he did have a view of my fire escape, and I cannot help but mentally go through all the nights I spent sitting on the steps, looking up at the sky and down at the city. How long? In the kitchen, he takes off his sweater to wash off the worst of the blood. How long have you lived here? Come on, you know how long. Right, why? Why not? He shrugs. I have lots of free time, very few interests, just the one really. He glances in my direction. He's talking about you, a redundant, obnoxious voice screams in my head. I want to punch it. What about killing vampires, shouldn't you? Am I the last of my bloodline? No, there are two more, but they are like you. Like me. They carefully select their food, no longer kill innocents. It still makes no sense. Since when did the Helsing Guild give a pass to ethical vampires? Since never, I believe, but I wouldn't know. I stopped working with them a while ago. Oh, I tilt my head. I didn't think that was something slayers could do. Retire, I mean. He kills the faucet and turns to me, leaning back against the counter, giving me a full view of the Columbina mask on his shirtless chest. They don't. Slayers just keep being reassigned to new bloodlines until they die. Some have tried to leave, but it tends to get messy. The guild is not a particularly benevolent former employer. Then why did they let you go? They didn't. When I left, they sent people after me. And I sent them back. With a politely worded refusal to rejoin. With their heads cut off. Another shrug. I didn't choose to become a slayer. I was the youngest son of poor parents, and they sold me off to the guild to feed my older siblings. Nothing was explained to me. I was molded and plied and ordered to slaughter what was described to me as a horde of beasts made in the devil's image that threatened the very survival of humankind. But 4 centuries ago, things changed, and I no longer wanted any part of that. I left. The guild tried to punish me, but after a while they realized that no slayer was powerful enough to take me, and they quit. There aren't too many vampires left, and all I want is to mind my business. I may be a loose end for them, but I'm a harmless one. 4 centuries ago. The 1600s, when the masquerade ball happened. I can't wrap my head around it. So, we talked about the meaning of life or some shit at a dance, and you had fun, and you changed your mind about killing vampires because I swallow. Because you suddenly found me cute or something. I didn't suddenly find you anything. I always knew you were cute. His lips curl as though it's the first time he's used the word in all his eons, and it tastes too saccharine in his mouth. You've never not been that to me, and no, that's not the reason. Then what? I spent years killing your kind. Then, at the ball, I exchanged a few words with you. And for the first time since I was turned into a slayer, I realized that you were not as soulless as I had been taught. You were rational. You had feelings. You thought of more than just your own desires. He crosses his arms, unapologetic. so I decided to do my own research. Which would be, you seemed wise and interesting, but at the start, I didn't mean to spare you. I just wanted to observe you, to learn more. And I observed, always from afar, and there was a lot of you to study. I learned that you didn't kill indiscriminately, that you helped weak people carry heavy bags, that you shared your wealth and defended innocence and offered to walk your neighbor's dog when she broke her hip. Oh my God, he's talking about Mrs. Cole and Pumpkin in the 1930s. He was a very cute dog, I say, numb. Laszlo is so unreadable, I cannot tell whether he shares my opinion of Pomeranians. I watched you and your simple, mundane acts of kindness. They were small, but they made all the difference for those who received them. He pauses for a moment as if waiting for me to protest, to roll my eyes, to scream at him for spying on me for centuries. But I have nothing to yell about, and he continues, I had been raised to. I was told that vampires were a detriment to this world, but it was obvious that you made others' lives easier. And looking at you, I couldn't help but think that the world was better, because you were in it. But you still tried to kill me, I want to say, because he did, for centuries, over and over. After I formed my opinion of you, I focused on the rest of your bloodline. 2 other women who, like I said, don't hurt innocents. I decided to spare them too, but after that, for the first time, I sensed some hesitation, as though what comes next he's not too comfortable with, something harder to admit. I missed you, watching you, observing you, I just liked you. It was a new feeling for me, wanting to know someone, wanting to be known by them as I truly am, so I tried to do that. You tried to, what? To talk to you, to explain that I no longer wished to kill you. When? In Italy, then in Derbyshire during the 19th century, in Turkey a few years later, Thailand and Indonesia, a few more times too. I remember. Or, more accurately, I remember him coming after me in all those places. Of course, I thought that it was part of a slayer's hunt, not that he was trying to what? Get to know me better. You stabbed me, as recently as Berlin. His eyebrow lifts. And you impaled me in Colombia. Ethelthrith, for people like us, that's the equivalent of pinching. And after a while, hunting you became the only way to be close to you. I wanted to spend time with you, but I could only do it as the slayer tasked with bringing an end to your bloodline. He looks out the window. I gave myself permission to show myself to you once a decade, and the remaining time I just stuck around, made sure you were okay. Not that you haven't proven over and over that you can take care of yourself, but he shrugs again, and for the first time since becoming a vampire, I understand something very important. I may not need to breathe, but I still need to be able to breathe. And right now, I just can't. Basically, you had a crush on me, I summarize, my voice raspy. After several heartbeats, he nods. I suppose so. It wasn't sexual, not at the start. But then. He bites the inside of his cheek, bashful. I liked you a lot. As a person, as a woman, you were beautiful. And whenever we were close, despite the fact that violence was involved, you felt good. I wonder if I'm imagining it, the slight flush dusting his cheeks. I don't know you well, Ethelthrith, but I know you better than you do me. And yesterday morning, even after I woke up and couldn't remember anything, everything I felt for you was just there, and it still is. It still is. He can't possibly have said no, because you're a vampire slayer. In retirement. So what would you like to do, now that, what would you? His throat works. It's your decision to make, Ethelthrith. Oh my God, it is. It really is. And somehow, despite how incredibly messed up all of this is, it's the easiest decision I've ever had to make. I think you have an advantage, and you know things about me that I don't, about you, that is, and it's only fair that. I fist my hands at my sides, feeling dizzy. Slowly, surely, an idea coalesces in my head. It's only fair that I spend time with you, and that we get even. He freezes like what I just said detonated 1,000,000 bombs in his brain. But then he nods gingerly as if not to spook me. Maybe we could, tomorrow night, for instance, meet and talk, but I'm going to need to leave now. I've bled a lot, which means that I'm going to need to feed soon, so I'll have to find someone who. I will help, he blurts out. I nod, laugh a little. You have a lead on someone very shitty. No, he says, but he turns around to open a drawer and pulls out a sharp, gleaming knife. Before I can grasp what he's about to do, he closes his fist around it and lets the blade slice a deep cut across his palm. But I'd be happy to provide you with what you need. My spine, together with the rest of my nerve endings, liquefies. I feel my entire body tremble. Try to make myself consider the impossibility of it, a slayer, offering nourishment to me, a vampire. Then the scent of his blood hits my nostrils, and all I can do is run to him. Chapter 14. We bump into several sharp corners before finally finding a flat surface, which happens to be the tiled floor of his kitchen. I hold Laszlo's palm against my mouth, latch tightly on to the wound he created for me, just for me, and take deep, thick gulps as I climb on top of him to straddle his lap. It's like he's my own prey, one I've hunted down and subdued and captured. One I've decided to keep for myself. From the way the amber of his irises disappears into dark pupils, he seems to have no objections to that, but to be certain that we're on the same page, I roll my hips against him and watch him arch and groan like he's in pain. Yup, the very same. Sex and blood have always lived in two separate buckets for me: pleasure and nutrients, luxury and necessity. Different, isolated, never to meet. But this, it's good. The taste of Laszlo's blood filling my mouth is delicious, vital sustenance, an addling drug that I'm already addicted to. It's never been this way for me, and the reason hits me as I take another shameless deep pull. This is the first time I've drank blood that was freely given to me. It's such a turn-on, I moan into Laszlo's hand and listen to him do the same. My whole body vibrates with pleasure at the simple thought of it, that this man wants me to be alive, to be healthy, wants to offer me something for the simple reason that he cares about my well-being. He doesn't mind that I'm taking. In fact, he's saying things in Hungarian that mostly boil down to fuck and yes and please. More. But he was injured too, and I'm drinking a lot. I force myself to stop, pull back from his flesh, and say, I don't want to take too much. With a flex of his abs, he sits up from underneath me and presses his palm back to my mouth, a silent shut up with this nonsense and take all you want. So I do. Until my blood-drunk, glazed eyes fall on his lips, and I realize that there's something I crave even more than his blood. I pull back. He watches me lick what's left of him off my lips, and his moan is pure agony. Fuck, he mutters, raspy, enraptured. Am I, do you, can I kiss you? I might taste like blood, so if you don't want to. He closes the space between us, and his mouth strokes mine, slow, sensual, deep. I feel his groan of pleasure exhaled against my tongue. The cut on his palm has already repaired itself, and one hand travels to my ass, my breasts, my hips, while the other tightens at the back of my neck. We both gasp, bodies melded together as close as they'll go. This is messy and uncoordinated, and unlike anything else. The feeling of touching and being touched by someone who knows me and whom I know. Someone who likes me and whom I like. Someone I could fall in love with and who would love me back. The sweetness of it roars through me, and I savor it. You are so beautiful right now, he says, his large body dragging against mine, and I feel a tingle in my spine, the desire to reach for more, to have his skin rub against mine. That's when it occurs to me that we didn't discuss any of this. I jumped him. I literally tackled him to the ground and, crap, I start. And then, I'm sorry, you just offered me blood and I may have taken advantage and we don't have to do anything. I can stop if you. He turns us around until I'm underneath him, and it's the loudest, most silent fuck no I've ever heard. The floor should be painfully hard, but I'm liquid underneath Laszlo, pliant and malleable, and if the feel of having me pinned makes him lose his mind a little, it has the same effect on me. A knot of heat and friction grows inside me, drags past rational thoughts, and then we're pulling clothes off each other and he's touching me everywhere, at once violent and reverent, frenzied and worshipful. Please, I beg, please, please. He brushes against me. The head of his cock is beaded, leaking. It hits my clit, parting me where I'm already wet. Okay, he asks. I nod, and then he's inside me, big, a little too fast, incomprehensible. At once, everything recedes. The world slows down. All I can feel is the beat of his heart against mine. His fingers tremble in my hair, and my thighs shake around his hips. At this age, I thought my body would hold no more surprises for me. No new feelings. I was wrong. Holy shit, he whispers, mostly to himself. Then he begins to move, the thrusts burning and buzzing inside me, my belly still full of the best blood I've ever had. His mouth against mine as he tells me how perfect I am, how long he's wanted this, that he already knows he'll need this forever. The thick length of him fills me, bringing me closer and closer to the edge until I whimper and clamp around him in long, pulling contractions. He comes right after, with a deep grunt muffled into my throat. And then I tighten my arms around him as he regains his breath, feeling the kisses he presses against my collarbone, my breasts, the soft flesh under my chin, and I start laughing, and laughing, and laughing. Laszlo lifts his head to glare at me. Glad to see that you find the most meaningful moment of my life hilarious. No, it's not. I try to stop chuckling in vain. I was just thinking we need to commission a commemorative plaque, put it up right there on that wall. Why? Because a slayer and a vampire doing it. It has to be a first in all of history, right? He bends down to kiss me, but not before I see the grin on his face. Epilogue. We are still working on building our routine, Laszlo and I, but that's okay. It's early days, and for now it's all about finding out what we like, and then doing it over and over and over again. Together, we talk, we kiss, we touch, we travel and we stay put, we dance, we fight, we cook, we choose books and movies and good poems, we watch plants grow and flowers bloom, we visit nature and big cities and rural farms, share crossword puzzles and coffee shops and museums. We avoid other immortals, slayers and vampires alike, but discover that it's not too hard to become friends with human neighbors and stray cats. During the winter, we go up north, where the sun barely rises. In the summer, we move south. Chile and Argentina. Halloween, though. For Halloween, we return home. We sit on our stoop, welcome trick-or-treaters, watch the festivities. Early in the night, Laszlo will have a candied apple. Later, I'll have a sip of his blood, and it'll taste sweeter than it does the rest of the year. Are you a vampire? I'll ask a boy in a beautiful velvet cape, handing him a full-size candy bar. He'll nod, happy. And I'm a vampire hunter, his friend will tell me. Weird, huh? Laszlo will whisper in my ear, pulling me back into his solid warmth. His long arms will close around my torso, and I'll smile and think to myself, weird. But weirder things have happened.